Hello again. As you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy over here for EliTheComputerGuy.com and EverymanIT.com. Today's class is installing Windows Server 2008. So we're going to start to have a number of classes on Windows Server 2008, and so the best place to start is installing the server operating system. Now, don't try to make this out to be more than it is. Installing a server operating system is exceedingly easy. If you can install Windows 7, you can install Windows Server. It is no big deal. You have a CD, you put it in the computer, you boot the computer off the CD, you click a few things, and you're done. It is very simple. This class is not going to go into the more complicated aspects of actually administering a server. This is simply to show you how to install the operating system, so as we go through this track of courses, well, you have an operating system to play with. So with that, this class is installing Windows Server 2008. If you give me a second, we'll dive right in. So before we go into the demonstration of actually installing Windows 2008 Server, we need to go over a couple of concepts. The first two questions that are most important are, one, where are you going to get the installation media? Where are you going to get the operating system from? And then two, what are you going to install the server operating system onto? Well, the first part is really easy and really nice from Microsoft. Microsoft gives almost all of their enterprise class software out as trial versions. These are completely functional trial versions. They're not handicapped in any way. They simply will only work for a certain amount of time, so 90 days or 180 days. So you can install the server software and you get full functionality for the length of the trial. And again, it's like 3 months or 6 months. It's a good, nice length of time. So you can create a server, you can create a domain controller, you can create a domain, you can create an Active Directory cluster. You can do everything that the operating system can do. All it is limited by time. So basically, all you need to do is just do a Google search for this class, do Windows 2008 Server Trial. It will take you to the Microsoft download site, and then you can just download it as an ISO file and install it. You will notice whenever I do these installation classes that I do not get a little product key whenever, or a request for a product key when I install the software. The reason is because even though I own licenses for all this software, I find it easier to use the trial software for testing purposes. The reason is because it doesn't ask for licensing keys, it doesn't ask for activation, it doesn't ask for all that just tedious garbage that can go poorly. You can simply create the ISO, you can install the server, you can play around with it, do whatever you need done, and then delete the hard drive, and it doesn't matter. So the first place I would say you should get this operating system software is simply through the trial. If you want to get the fully functional software, you can go to newegg.com or CDW and buy the server software. But Server 2008 Standard Edition, which I will be showing you, generally costs about $600. So it's not inexpensive. This isn't Windows 7. So if you do decide to buy it, it's going to cost about $600. So I would say just go with the trial software, at least right now while you're playing around. The next question then, as I was saying, is what hardware are you going to use? Again, a lot of new people, they think that when they're going to be building servers, that they need special server hardware, like, these 1U Xeon servers or something like that. You do not. Remember, you can install server operating systems on any PC hardware. So you can install it onto a laptop like this. You can install it onto your average desktop computer. You can install it onto a netbook computer even. It will be slow as hell, but you can install it onto there. So don't feel like you have to run out and buy a $2,000 server from Dell or HP, etc. For me, when I create my labs, honestly, I have 6 of these $400 laptop computers. They've got 4 gigs of RAM, some kind of AMD processor, etc. And I can create a whole Active Directory cluster off of these laptop computers. So if you have a laptop computer at home that you're not using, or a desktop computer at home that you're not using, you can use that. The requirements for Server 2008 are actually very low. You only need a 1 gigahertz processor and 512 meg of RAM in order to install the server operating system. It's going to be slow, and it's going to be horrible, and it's going to be tedious to use. But you can install the server onto that low level of hardware and it will function. You can play with it. So you really can go buy a $50 used computer and install the server operating system on it. It's true. Again, it's going to be slow, but you can do it. You can also, as I will do when we're doing the demonstration, install this operating system into a virtual machine on your computer. So on my Windows 7 computer, I use VirtualBox for virtualization. So you can simply use VirtualBox to create a server virtual machine. You would install it the same way. It's just got a few other quirks to it. So these are some of the things that you should think about when you decide to start playing around with Windows Server 2008. The main one is just go out, get the trial software. Even if you can afford the full license, I swear to God, if you're going to be doing playing, if you're going to be creating labs, you want to use the trial software. It'll make your life a lot easier. And then 2, you just figure out the hardware that you're going to use. Again, any computer that's been built in the last 6 or 7 years can run Windows Server 2008 okay. I'm not going to run a corporation off of it. I wouldn't put it into a production environment. But if you want to play around and if you want to test, you can use some old crappy Pentium 4 with a gig of RAM and it really will be good enough. So keep those things in mind. Again, a lot of people try to make this more complicated than it is, and it's just very simple. Go out, get the trial software, and then use a very basic computer to install the operating system if you don't have anything better. So now that you've gone to the Microsoft website and you've downloaded the ISO for Windows Server 2008, and then you've turned that ISO into a CD, now you can install that onto your computer or your virtual machine. Now, with Windows Server 2008, there are a number of different versions of it. So there's the standard version, there's the enterprise version, there's the data center version, and then there's the web server version. You are going to want to do at this point in time the standard version. So standard version is what 90% of all businesses use. If you have an Active Directory domain controller in your little office, that is going to be the standard version. If you have 1,000 people all connected to the server, that's going to be the standard version. Enterprise and data center versions, you know, they're for the big stuff. If you're in a company with 300,000 people, that's the software that you're going to use. The web server can be very effective depending on what you are planning to do with your server, but basically all that is built for is to host websites or to host web applications. So if you've created a website that you need to put onto a Windows server, you would buy the Windows Web Server Edition. The final part with all these different editions is you will see something called Server Core. Now, if you're taking this class, I'm going to tell you, stay away from Server Core. The reason is because Server Core is Windows Server only without the GUI, without any graphics. You know what they say, old is new again? Well, basically, with Windows Server Core, you go back to the old command line environment and you have to type out commands just like you would in Linux or Unix, etc. Or DOS, back in the day. So if you don't know what you're doing, once you get done installing Server Core, all you're going to get is a little blinking cursor. And if you don't know what to do next, you're kind of screwed. So when you go, you're just going to download the trial version, and then as I'll show you in the demonstration, we're going to install the standard version, and that's why. Also, you will notice with Server 2008, the only problem you may run into is that it is only a 64-bit version now. So there are no 32-bit versions of Windows 2008. That may matter with the hardware you're using. Again, if you're using a computer that's been around for 6 or 7 years, it should have a 64-bit processor in it. You know, through the wonders of horrible manufacturing, I'm sure there are still a few 32-bit processors out there. So just be careful. If you try to install the server operating system and it won't install, it may be because you have a 32-bit processor in your computer. If that's the case, then you just need to go out and find a computer with a 64-bit processor. So when you're going to go install, you're going to take the disk, you're going to put it into your computer, and then you're going to change the boot order on your computer to boot from CD. This is very important. So if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to boot from CD. So basically, you just take your disk, you put it into the computer, you select boot from CD, and then when you boot from CD, you're going to go into the installation process. So since you understand that, let's go onto my computer, and again, I'm going to install Windows Server 2008 as a virtual machine on my Windows 7 PC. So here we are at my Windows 7 computer. So when you install the Windows Server 2008 operating system, you can install it one of two ways. You can install it directly onto hardware. So if you have a laptop computer lying around, you could install it onto a laptop computer. If you have a desktop computer lying around, you could install it directly onto the desktop computer, or you can install it like I'm going to do onto a virtual machine that's on a computer that's already running. So I prefer to use a VirtualBox, but there's also Microsoft Virtual PC, there's VMware Fusion, there's a lot of options if you're going to be doing virtualization. I did do a class on VirtualBox, so I'm not going to explain a lot of that here, but basically, so you know when you're looking at these screens, I'm installing the server onto a virtual machine in VirtualBox. You'll have to decide where you want to install the server onto for what you're doing. Now, the first thing that I want to show you, one of the great things that Microsoft has started doing is offering trial software for their enterprise solutions. So you don't have to go out and drop $600 in order to buy the server software if all you're going to be doing is trials and testing and trying to study for an exam. Do a Google search for Server 2008. When you go to the Microsoft website, you'll be able to find this page, and you will notice that they have Windows Server 2008 R2 trial software, and you can download this. It's fully functional. It gives you can do absolutely everything in the world with the software. The issue is it has a 90-day expiration. So basically, it gives you all the options. So this isn't one of those trial software where the trial software is a little bit handicapped. This is the full software, but you have a limited time to use it. Again, if all you're doing is playing or studying, 90 days is more than enough to play around with stuff. Honestly, even though I have all this software completely licensed from Microsoft, a lot of times I still use the trial software because it's actually easier to install. It's not going to be asking you for a lot of activation codes and license keys. You can just install it pretty cleanly, play with it, and then wipe out the hard drive when you're done. But all you would do here is you go and you click on download trial, and that would download the ISO file for you. So here I've booted this virtual machine. So this is the equivalent of booting your computer if you're going to install this on a computer. Then I've chosen to boot off the ISO file. So if you are sitting at a computer and you have a CD, then you would change the boot options so that you boot off of the CD. So you have to boot off the CD first so that you get to the operating system, and then you get here. This overall is going to be a pretty simple process. How long it takes really depends upon the hardware that you are using. If you have 16 gigs of RAM and a Xeon processor, blah, 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 it'll probably take you less than 30 minutes. If you're on a virtual machine like I have here, it might take you a little bit longer. You'll notice during this process there might be some like little transitions as I go, and I'll probably use transitions while you're watching this just so you don't have to sit here for 30 minutes and watch a screen and do nothing. But so here we are, we're at the screen, install Windows. It'll ask you what language you want to use, time and format and keyboard. If you're in the US, You leave these exactly as they are. Don't mess with it. If you're in some other country, well, play with it as you want. Then you hit next, and then all you're going to do is hit install now. There is this repair your computer option. We'll go into that in another class. If you have a server that's already up and running and it crashes, you would use this repair your computer option to try to fix it. What to know before installing Windows? Well, you should already know what you think you're doing before you get to this point, so don't worry about that. But now we do just click that. And so setup is starting. So here, it's going to ask you what version of Windows Server 2008 do you want to install. So if you're just a complete newbie, then just go with the R2 standard full installation version. Just do that. If you don't know what these other things are, don't do the other things. So standard version, just so you know, is just the standard version. It has all the normal options that you would want. This is what you would use in a normal business environment. Enterprise is what you would use in a very large business environment. So let's say, the standard version, let's say you have one office with 1,000 people in it. Then you would use the standard version. The enterprise version would be, let's say you have 20 offices with 1,000 people in them. That would be the enterprise version because you're dealing with multiple sites. The data center, so let's say you decide to create your own Travelocity.com, or basically you're trying to create the next Mozy, something that's going to be in a data center environment. That's what you would do here. And then web server is something that you may use in the future. I actually have used this in the past. Web server is the Windows 2008 operating system, but without Active Directory. Why this is good is, remember, server operating systems are much more robust than desktop operating systems. So Server 2008 is much more robust than Windows 7. And the server operating systems are fundamentally built to do a different thing than the desktop operating systems. So those server operating systems are built to handle all this network traffic. So when I originally created Everyman IT, I originally hosted the website off of a Windows Web Server 2008. It gave me all the power and robustness of a Windows server, but it didn't give me Active Directory, which I did not care about anyway. So here, again, just go with the standard. As a note, you will see these server core installation. What core means is that basically at the end of this, there will be no graphical user interface. There will be no GUI. So imagine if Windows looked like Linux. Basically, the only way you can interact with a core installation is through the command line. So there's no GUI, there's no right click, there's no left click, there's no arrows, there's none of that. It is simply a command line interface. So again, probably you're not going to want to do that. So again, R2 standard full installation. Then we hit next. Do you accept the licensing agreements? Yes. Next. Then what do you want to do? If you're upgrading a server, you would do upgrade. Normally, if it's a new installation like we're doing now, we'll do a custom. Then it's going to say, what do you want to do with your hard drive? So this is a virtual hard drive, so I only gave it 60 gigs of space. If you're going to be creating a real server machine, you should probably use a 1 terabyte hard drive now. They're inexpensive. Again, in all these classes, as I talk to you about things, all professionals have their views on how things should be done. When it comes to partitioning hard drives on server computers, I have a particular viewpoint. My viewpoint is that you should not partition the hard drive on your server unless you absolutely need to, as in the software you're going to be installing on this server requires a separate partition. A lot of people, a lot of technicians feel that when you install a server, you should create multiple partitions. So you should create a system partition. That's where the operating system is installed. Then you would create a data partition. That's where you would store all the shared files and stuff. If this was an Exchange server, then you would create an email partition. The problem that I have found in the real world is many people create these partitions too small, and then they run out of room on the partition that they've created, and then that crashes the computer, and then everything goes to hell. I have found, I've installed numerous, 100, more than 100 servers in different business environments. I have found simply creating one big partition on the hard drive is the best way to go. I have seen no drawbacks to this, and it has caused me no problems. So I would suggest you just create one really big hard drive. If you wish to create lots of different partitions, that's your business, but I told you not to. So from there, all we'll do is we'll click next. And now this is going to be going through the installation process, and this process will go about as fast, like I say, as your hardware will let it go. So this is where it copies files to the hard drive, it expands the files, it installs, blah, blah, blah. So if you have really, really, really fast hardware, this will go pretty quickly, and if you have rather slow hardware, it will go be pretty slow. So like I say, on this virtual machine, it'll probably take a few minutes. So I'll come back in a few minutes once this little part's done. And so, after the operating system has installed itself onto the hard drive, you're going to get this screen. So you have to put in a password for Windows 2008 server. Now, during this process, there will have been a couple of reboots on the computer. I want to make sure you don't do what I've seen happen with new computer people, is you have the CD and the CD drive. When the computer reboots, you're going to see a prompt that says hit any key to boot from the CD or DVD. Do not click that key, please. If you click the key, it's going to start you from the beginning process. I've trained people on how to build these computers, build servers, and you don't know how many students basically kept redoing the installation process 5 times in a row, because every time they saw the prompt to click any key to boot off a CD, they kept clicking the key to boot off the CD. So boot off the CD once, and then don't boot off the CD again. Let the process happen. So once you get here, it's going to ask you for the new password, and you're going to do OK, and then you are going to put in whatever password it is you want to put in. With these new passwords, do remember that they are a pain in the butt. They've got to have uppercase letters and lowercase letters and numbers and all kinds of stuff. So just keep that in mind. So my password has been changed. So you can't really do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or ABCD anymore, or ABCD 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't work. So now it's going to be preparing the desktop for the first use. And there we go. So the server is installed. A lot of people think installing the server is a lot more complicated than it is. Basically, this is just installing an operating system. If you can install Windows 7, you can install Windows XP, you can install Linux, you can install a Linux server, you can install 2008 server, you can install 2003 server. There's really nothing to installing an operating system. You just saw the entire process. At this point, once you've finished installing, it's going to give you all this information here. The important thing that we'll come back to at different classes is down here where it says customize roles. So add roles or add features. So if we want to make this a file server or an IIS server or a whole bunch of stuff, we would add roles for features, adding backup, that kind of stuff, functionality of the server. That's what you would do here. Those will be in different classes, though. This class was just installing Windows Server 2008, and really that is all there is to it. If you close this out, you can go to Start, you can right-click Computer, and you can go to Manage, just like you would in an XP machine or a 2003 server or a 7 machine. You select that, And then this will give you a lot of the functionality that you're used to. Roles, again, you don't use. We can go to diagnostics though. And the big thing is if you need to install additional device drivers, you would then go to diagnostics and then you would go to device manager. And then once this comes up, then you could install device drivers just like you would in an XP machine or a Windows 7 machine, etc. Basically, at this level, at the basic functionality, it's all essentially the same. So we can see like there's a base system device here. If I wanted to update the driver, I could right click and do update driver software. This device driver stuff, again, if you're not used to it, it's pretty simple. The easiest thing to do is if you're installing this onto a computer, a laptop computer, a desktop computer, etc., you should have a driver's disk. Simply use that driver's disk to install the device drivers off the driver's disks. If not, what you would need to do is you would need to go to the website of the company that produced the hardware for your system and then download the device drivers there. But that's really all there is for it. So essentially that's all there is to installing Windows Server 2008. I showed you the whole thing right here. We're looking at a 2008 server desktop. We can't do a lot with it yet, but that will come in different classes. I just wanted to show you how to do this so at least we have the basis of how to install servers. So you see how easy it is. Again, a lot of people think installing servers is a big deal. You saw it. It takes 30 minutes, maybe. It's that simple. So with that, let's go back out to the real world and have some final thoughts. So that's all there is to installing Windows Server 2008. Don't make it out to be anything more than it is. If you can install Windows 7 or a Linux operating system, you can install Windows Server 2008. It is very simple. A 13-year-old can very easily do this. All you do is you download the operating system from the Microsoft website, you take that ISO file, you turn it into a DVD, you put that DVD into some crappy old computer, and you boot off of it and install the operating system. It is no big deal. As we talked about, if you're thinking about what kind of hardware you're going to be using to install this operating system on, is you can install it as a virtual machine like I showed you up on VirtualBox, or you can use any crappy computer that's been sitting in the closet for a few years collecting dust. If it's younger than 8 years, it should be okay. You simply need a 1 gigahertz processor that supports 64-bit and has 512 worth of RAM. If you have that, you can install this operating system onto it. Again, you would not want to put this into a production environment, but in a little lab in your basement or in your bedroom, it will work fine. It will be perfectly fine for testing and playing and messing around with. So that's all there is to installing Windows Server 2008. As you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy over here for EliTheComputerGuy.com and EverymanIT.com. I enjoy teaching this class and I look forward to seeing you at the next one.